The fastest growing luxury SUV market is something full of a lot of tight competitors. So I think it's time we sit down and talk about the Genesis GV70 and compare it to the Lexus NX 350. And this time, I'm gonna go through a clipboard of details and information. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video to see which one is right for you. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Lexus related content. Okay, so before even getting super into the Genesis, I already learned one of the coolest facts that give this a big step up versus a lot of competitors in the market, and that is the engine choices. So you can still get a GV70 Sport with a 3.5 liter turbocharged engine. In this segment, that makes this car a rocket ship with 375 horsepower and 391 foot-pounds of torque. Now that's on the fully loaded one, which in Canada right now retails above the 84,000 mark. But then I remembered, horsepower isn't for everybody, and that's where the Lexus really comes in. So the Lexus has so many different trims and configurations, starting with the lowest model, being the NX 250. This is a car that has pretty much the same powertrain as the Toyota RAV4, a 2.5 liter, 4-cylinder, tried and true engine that takes regular gas, and not any numbers of horsepower to write home about. And then we go up to the NX 350. Now that is when we start to see a turbocharged engine. So increasing the horsepower and the torque from the turbocharger engine, which I didn't actually write down the spec here, but it boosts it well into like the 275 mark and around the same in torque. In that series, we have 7 different models. And I like to break them down into two separate lines to be able to go through them easier. So we have the premium package and the F-Sport 1 at the bottom of each one of those lineups. Then we have the luxury package on this side and the F-Sport 2 on this side. Ultra luxury up from the luxury. And then the F-Sport 3 and executive at the top end. And that's just on the gas turbocharged NX 350. If we go over to the hybrid model, we have a premium package, a luxury package, an ultra luxury package, and an executive package. And of course, that amazing tried and true Toyota Lexus hybrid powertrain, which they've been doing it for decades now, so they've really got it down pat. And that hybrid engine takes regular fuel, even though it says online recommended, it can still take regular fuel. And now we have a powertrain that, doesn't have crazy horsepower, but for the size of the vehicle, we have an amazing fuel economy that sometimes can even get you like 800 kilometers to a tank of gas. Then from there, we have one more secret weapon, the NX 450h Plus. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but the NX can come in a plug-in hybrid form, meaning instead of like the range anxiety of a plug-in full EV, we also have the hybrid powertrain. So you can plug it in overnight and you can still put gas in it, and the two will work together in collaboration, as a millennial would say, to give you a better, further range by plugging it in every night. And you can have it in full EV mode, and I do a whole video on that. So that's all the configurations of the NX. The Genesis has 3 trims with a 2.5 liter turbo, the tech package, the prestige package, and then there's that sport package, which is the fast one with the 3.5 turbo, which even the 2.5 liter turbo Genesis has 300 horsepower, which is super impressive. Again, especially in this size of vehicle. So we can sit here and go through all the facts and features, or I can just show you them on the car. So I think let's look at them on the car. So let's get into the front of these vehicles. And might I say, do we have a close competition? The Genesis has a very classy and timeless design with this really cool, like a dark chrome grille. It is plastic, and it reminds me of the Lexus spindle grille in a lot of ways. We have some openings in the center, but the sides are all sort of like taped off with some plastic, and again, I'm sure that's for aerodynamic. A body line I didn't notice until right now is actually sort of midway, and it's big. There's like a big fin right here, which I really like. To the sides, we have those little corner grills, which seem to be active. I can stick my finger in there. We have a sensor, I think it's a sensor, on this little square bit towards the bottom lower grill, which I think is a great idea because I remember seeing a lot of big spindle grills like this covered up, halfway for those radar sensors, but now we've moved them down to the bottom. We have some true chrome, and that's a little bit different than the grill chrome at the bottom. And again, just a really sharp sort of like body line on that front. The headlights are probably what stick out the most to me on the Genesis. They have a really nice aura to them. That's probably the word I'm gonna use with the Genesis today, is aura, I think. Where we see some dimension there. The headlights themselves have so many different filaments. I noticed that on the GV80 when I did that video, where some of them are for looking and some of them are just for looks. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think they look super sharp. Then we have a little bit of an indentation here on a pretty big hood, and it's pretty long, like it doesn't slope a whole lot. A little bit of a body line off to the side there as well. And then that beautiful Genesis logo, which again, has some really nice detail. If you get up close to it, it even feels nice to touch. Not that I recommend going around touching people's hood emblems. That's not what I'm about, but it does look cool. Also, the color itself is like a very classy dark green to me. And when I was at their dealership picking this up today, I did see some other really classy colors that are just different. Like when you think of classy, it doesn't have to just be black, even though I love a black car. It doesn't have to be gray, it doesn't have to be silver. It can be these greens or bluish silvers and stuff like that. Like you can mix it in there. It's all about how you pull it off, just like a good tailored suit. Over to the Lexus. And again, this is my bread and butter, so I'm gonna be able to speak to it a little bit differently. We have that straight up and down grille and front end. This one's the executive package, so it's not quite the hatching of the F-Sport spindle grille. It's more of the conservative style, as well as that Lexus emblem in the center, some venting at the bottom. I always think that the executive has such a less aggressive front end than like the F-Sport counterpart. We have some intakes off to the side, quartering lamp and fog lamp at the bottom, which I noticed the Genesis does not have. That's okay. Maybe the other packages do. A little bit of piano black, a little bit of a body kit here, and then that nice daytime running light that's above the triple beam LED headlights. And again, when we talk about a lot of those features like intelligent high beam and stuff like that, I'm sure every brand in this segment at this price point is going to have that. And then we have our turning lamp, which is incorporated into that as well. So both really classy designs. I will also say, when you look at the hoods, the hood is a different vibe. It's way more sloped on the NX, and it has this line that sort of like fades to the center, just giving it a little bit more angles when you're looking at the NX. It just has a bit more angular, if that's even a word. Let's look at the side profiles, and we'll start with the Jenny, which is what I've nicknamed the Genesis. So the GV70, again, it's the compact small SUV. So I'm about 6'1", and I do tower over it a little bit. But let's talk about some of the body lines. So what I noticed just now, when I was standing up here earlier, I noticed there was like a little lip on the hood that's like kind of like overlapping the fender. And I was like, that's a weird body style, I guess you could say. And then I followed it. And when I followed it down, you see this other body line here. So it's like two body lines near each other. And it continues to the back of the vehicle, but as it gets towards the very back, it starts to kind of taper and get smaller and go lower. A good friend of mine, Paul, tells me body lines like this are actually have a big structural component to them, but also it just looks really sharp. It creates a little bit of a flow from left to right. It's kind of like painting a fence with those swipes, and I don't really know what I'm talking about, but that's what it's like. Let's talk about the wheels. So this package has a 21-inch Michelin tire setup with kind of like, yeah, it's like a 5-spoke sort of windmill type design. Interesting enough, behind there is a decent sized brake caliper from what I can see. It might be a 6-piston. If not, the caliper is the size of a 6-piston, and overall quite a joy to look at. In terms of body decorations and stuff like that, I mean, there's another little line towards the bottom, but that's all painted. I do like the Genesis does that, is that a lot of those accents are painted body color instead of like the plastic, which I know is like more durable, but still kind of cool to look at. We got some chrome, which looks great with that green color. So some chrome going around those windows, and actually, it's a cool little body line. It just kind of like flows down, kind of reminds me of the RX. Painted mirror caps with the black bottoms, as well as regular door handles. But I have to tell you how solid that feels. Lexus is known for stuff like that, but to see our competition really holding their own with that door sound and how heavy the door feels. Good job, Genesis. You're doing good. You're doing really good. Then as you get to the back, I mean, compact SUV, so it's not like we're expecting big windows here, but there is a little bit, actually, that is a little window there too, kind of like the RX. A little bit of a window setup, small window there for the rear. I did check. They are a square setup, meaning the rears are 255s and the fronts are 255s. So you can rotate tires. Again, when you get into some of the higher performance stuff, you can't do that. So The fact that the Genesis has that is a good sign. Let's compare it to the NX. Okay, so over at the NX Executive, it's not my favorite wheel in the lineup, but it does look good, especially with like a black exterior, I find. This one has sort of like a little bit of exposed aluminum. So it's like those, 5 of the spokes have that exposed. The rest is kind of like, honestly, even in other colors, it's almost the same as the body color. This one, it's almost like that Cloudburst Nebula Gray. And I know that's kind of, the case on all of them. So that's kind of cool. The brake setup is much smaller than the Genesis for sure, because this isn't a sport one. The sport ones do have a little bit more of aggressive brake. We got a Bridgestone tire on there. And then let's talk about the body line. So even though this is not the sport, kind of side by side, the NX looks a little bit more athletic. So we have this sharper line right down the center that tapers up. The roof line, you know what? I think they're pretty similar. Maybe the NX is a little bit taller at the back there, but not a crazy amount. We got some chrome going around the windows as well, a chrome on the mirror cap with the paint, and the electronic door handle, which if you've seen any of my videos, I'm a big fan of, and a really solid door as well. The reason I like the electronic door handle so much is actually the getting out part, where you can just like apply pressure and move in one motion instead of like grabbing the lever and using your elbow. I know I've said that a million times, but I mean it. I really like that about the electronic door latch. We got a little bit of piano black in the center, and then the body kit on the sides is that plastic I talked about. I know it's durable. This is a very outside part of your car that gets full of dust and sand and dirt and stuff. But seeing the Genesis with the painted part, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool too. So whatever floats your boat. Another square setup with the tires, so you could rotate them front to back. And then we have a little glass here. So that Genesis almost looks bigger in this section by a little bit because of that glass. So that is something to think about. Okay, so let's do the back, and we'll start with the Genesis. And boy, does that Jenny have a nice back end. So we have these taillights that sort of swoop around, and the reason I like them so much is they seem timeless. They don't seem like a 2026, which by the way, this model is. They seem like it could have been from years past or designed from a European brand 20 years ago. You don't know. And I do think that is really cool. They're very flush. They have the signals built into them as well. So when you put those on, it's a different part that lights up. We got that Genny, Genesis, right across the back there. Very similar in the market right now. Lexus does it, Jaguar does it, Porsche does it, everybody does it. We got an exposed wiper here, which by the way, is where you press the button for the trunk. And how genius is that? It's so flush, the back, that's where they put it, and I think that's really smart. Ooh, and there's like a nice little sort of light right there. I guess that's so like if you're on the side of the road and you have your trunk open, it's like a taillight. It's like showing people. Big kudos to Genesis Niagara, by the way, because look how satisfying that trunk is. The way that they've detailed it shows very big pride in their product, and I want to thank them one more time for doing such a great job and letting me use this. Size-wise, I mean, really usable space. It's about hip height, so easy to load and unload. Decent size width, obviously smaller than things like the GV70 and the RX. However, in this segment, it's right there with all the rest. Tonneau cover, nice material, clips in, and then if you want to move it, you can. It's kind of like a paper. It sounds like paper. We got levers that we can fold down those seats, which is great. A little 12 volt, I call it the cooler plug, because you can plug in a cooler back there. I have to peek just because I'm curious. Oh, this is the books. Nice. I'm gonna open up the back here because I don't know about spare tire. Okay, we have a spare tire. So there's a full-size spare tire back there and a kit to be able to change it. Overall, very usable space. Okay, over to the NX, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but in this comparison, this is like the more edgy, more modern looking design language, where the Genesis is a little bit more of that old money. And the reason I say I can't believe I'm saying that is because when I compared this to the BMW, for instance, I felt the opposite. I felt like we were the old money, which I'm a fan of. So anyway, let me show you around. So we have the 3-piece taillights. We have one of this classic Lexus logo on each side of that Katana style top light. And I like the Katana style top light because it has a really good 3-dimension to it. So when I'm looking at it from every different angle, it kind of looks a little bit different, and at nighttime, it looks super sharp, and I love that. Then we have that LE-XUS, which I feel like is getting bigger, but I could just be going crazy. We got our NX350H, which is what this one is. And then, a little bit of piano black and a little bit of textured black towards the bottom. Opening it up, and it's a very quick open. Again, we have a very usable trunk space. So decent height, decent depth, decent width. Maybe the Genesis is slightly bigger back there, I bet. We have a different style tonneau cover here. It's kind of like, I guess, a foldable one. So instead of having to like roll it, it's kind of always out, and then you can fold it, you can hang it up, you can do things like that. We have some storage on the sides. This one being the executive, you can fold down the rear seats with power. And this one being the hybrid there is no spare tire here, but there is extra space. So if you look here, I could almost reach up to my elbow in space just right there alone. Plus here is that's the actual battery, but there is a tire repair kit in there somewhere. And of course it comes with 2 sets of mats. It's got some grocery hooks. We have a cooler plug back there. And there's also a net that goes kind of across here. So probably slightly smaller than the Genesis, but still a lot of amenities in that trunk. Okay, so looking inside the Genesis, and I'm super excited to be in here because I do really like this interior. If I had to describe this interior, it would be none other than modern, which is silly because I know I just said that the back end of this thing is not modern. But let me explain. We have a beautiful, very direct ambient lighting when you're greeted in. We have some really high-end materials here, which I love that car brands in 2026 and 2025 are not cutting corners when it comes to like the materials they use for interior. And Genesis is showing us that. Really good job, Jenny. I'm falling in love with you. I'm a Lexus guy, die hard, but this is a really good competitor. So we have a lot of that material sort of all around. I mean, your classic amenities on that side. In the center here, I like that it's a big center console with just a few buttons. We don't have too many layers. We don't have too many things like that. We have the shifter, which is very easy to use. It's just like a little dial, and I saw that in the GV70 when I used that. The reason I like this is to go from drive to reverse is that easy. You just go bam, bam. Bam, bam, let me with that, bam, bam. And then to park, you just hit park. So really easy to switch between gears. Funny that they chose the same type of dial for like their multimedia system. But again, I guess you'll get used to it, especially where your armrest is. I mean, it's pretty easy. You're relaxed with whatever one you're pressing. Then we have a little armrest here. It's small, it's cute, it does the trick. We have USB-C in there. We have a wireless charger right here in front of that, which is nice. And it says NFC, which is near field communication. So I wonder what that does to your phone when you put it there. Couple cup holders, nothing too crazy there. I will say, and maybe I'll just turn it on. By the way, good sound. That's a good sound. It does a good job. We're gonna hit no to finding a gas station for now. Then we have our home button, our menu button, and our back button all up there. Pretty ergonomic. And you know, there's a lot of features in this multimedia display. Like I could do a whole video on just that. Things like quiet mode, which I think is very thoughtful. So quiet mode means the radio media is only played to the front seats, meaning if you had a couple sleeping kids back there or sleeping golden doodle like I do, it won't wake them up, which I think is cool. I'm gonna go back because there was another feature I wanted to showcase. On the GV80, you could pick the ambience, and I wanted to see if we could do that here. I might need Brian or Bailey at Genesis to show me, but nonetheless, I heard it's like the same display, so I'm sure you can do that. So lots of good things happening there. We have our little climate panel here, which is really nice. It is like touch, and it's really sharp. Wow, and it's fast. So that's all digital here. We have cooled seats and heated seats in the front. We have dual climate, and all your other stuff is there. Some shortcuts here, so we could go map, we could go nav, we could go media for like some quick media. Oh, here it is, sounds of nature. So if we click sounds of nature, oh yeah, that's lovely. Really cool. After the day I've had today at work, I would love to drive home listening to that. Or there's one on a sailing ship, which all my friends will laugh that I used to be super into pirates when I was growing up. But it's fun. I know it's a gimmick. I know that it's a novelty, but I think it's cool that brands are starting to do some other experiential stuff like that. Okay, let's talk about the steering wheel. So I always say with Genesis, sometimes I feel like I'm in a different brand, like a Mercedes. And that's how I feel with some of these controls. It reminds me of the Benz on the steering wheel here. So we got the wheel for our music, which is always super easy. We got this other little trackpad thing to control other screen related activities. We got a little star for like some favorites. We have some paddle shifters. I did use the paddle shifters earlier today. They're not that fast, but that's okay. The NX is not that fast either. But like the RX seems to be, the IS seems to be, I bet you maybe the sports car Genesis seems to be. So that's just that. Then we have our cruise controls and some other controls here. Oh, you can customize that Infinity style display to a million different versions and configurations and stuff, and it looks really cool. So definitely a lot of bespoke options there. And like I said, the materials all around on this interior are really good, super sharp. Oh, sunglass holder, yep, sunglass holder, which is always great. And then obviously just our map lights. And it also has a black roof liner, which I thought was interesting because it's a brown interior. Oh, one more thing. You can move this seat from right here, which I thought is cool. It's very Lexus flagship-like. The seats themselves, pretty comfortable. They're the perforated ones. You can't extend the thigh, but that's totally okay. In a car this size, I didn't really expect it. But let's take a look at the back and see how the back seat is. Okay, so sitting in the back of the GV70, it's bigger back here than I thought at first. So I have pretty ample headroom. I mean, the seating position itself is pretty good, and it has a reclining back seat, which in this segment, you wouldn't believe how hard that is to find. I do find it pretty comfortable back here. We have a little armrest and cup holders. I did hit my knee a few times, but that's because this seat moved back when we shut it off. You have heated seats back here. This package doesn't have cooled seats, but I think you can get it in that bigger engine one. The seats themselves, super comfy, as I said. There's a little map pocket, a couple little coat hangers and things like that. So overall, pretty decent back here for a 6'1" guy. And it does have a panel roof, which is always great for passengers in the back seat. Okay, so sitting in the NX Executive, and I do feel home because I had almost this exact same car as a demo for a long time, except mine wasn't the high package of the Executive. It was a few down. But anyway, first impressions versus the GV70 is the layers. Here we have much more layers of things going on. So that is one question to ask yourself about how you picture your luxury. We have some wood grain, which is really nice. We have some piano black, a couple grays, obviously these Rioja red seats, and a ton of buttons and features. Armrest that opens both ways, and it's a pretty deep armrest, might I say. Some cup holders, an electronic shifter, as well as some terrain buttons and things like that. We have our wireless charger and another little pocket here. And then when we turn on the hybrid motor and the vehicle itself, you're greeted by a giant Lexus screen. And on here, we have our Lexus multimedia system, which I would always say for like decades past, I would never write a book on Lexus's multimedia systems. But now with this latest one, it's good. It's like ahead of the pack, and I really think they did a great job on it. In there, you can customize all of your ambient lighting, which there's a lot here. If you're into ambient lighting though, the Lexus one is indirect light, meaning it's not supposed to be a distraction, it's supposed to be like shading in the background. That Genesis has direct light, so it's like you can really notice it. But on here, we have things like auto park feature, bird's eye view, all of the features in the Executive, and a really high-end Mark Levinson sound system. A heads-up display, which was on both models, as well as still a customizable bit here. The screen itself is customizable, yes, but on the Lexus, you can customize these finger buttons, I'm gonna call them. Your steering wheel controls are totally customizable. We do have some paddle shifts, as well as, you know, just a few buttons kind of off to the side there. Radar cruise control, Lexus Safety System Plus is standard on all Lexus models, so you don't have to pay extra for safety features. Those are all built in. And I didn't think the Genesis had this, but we have that digital rearview mirror where if you have tons of people in the back seat or boxes stacked to the roof or your golden doodle looking at you in the back, you can switch that, and now the camera on the back is what you're seeing through the mirror. We do have a sunglass holder, just like the Genesis, and black headliner as well. And overall seating position is gonna be pretty similar. I think maybe I'm sitting a little more upright in the Lexus, but really hard to say because they're both super comfy. Okay, in the back of the NX, I'm also pretty comfortable for being a small SUV. I've reclined my seat to be to the setting I like it. I have an armrest, I have heated seats, and things like USB-Cs and 12-volt outlets to charge. We still have some nice wood grain back here with the Mark Levinson logo. It's not gigantic. I prefer the RX back seat if I'm going on like a long trip, but it still does the trick. And we have that panel roof. So again, for rear seat passengers, it is super important to have things like that to make it feel more spacious. But pretty neck and neck with the Genesis in terms of size and amenities. And as my good friend Dane would say, at the end of the day, both of these vehicles are very easy to see why they're the top in this class. And this class of vehicle, it's easy to see why it's the biggest growing segment in the luxury market today. There's the GV70, which you can get at a decently priced low-end spec with some really nice features and some class to it, or spec it out to an $85,000 monster with a ton of horsepower, a ton of features, and a ton of class. And then we have the Lexus, which with all of the configurations you can do, you can really find the package and powertrain that fit what you're looking for. No, our horsepower isn't our middle name on this car, but fuel economy is. And it's undeniable that Lexus still maintains that amazing reliability and resale value that has built this brand over years. So if you're looking at these two cars, you might want to ask yourself, are you looking for that really classy, high spec'd out small SUV? that's kind of the new kid on the block and looks amazing? Or are we gonna go with something like the NX that's gonna favor things like fuel economy, reliability, and resale value? It all just depends. And I'm proud to say that one of our closest competitors, the Genesis, is doing such a good job to be up against the NX. So let me know in the comments below which one you would choose, the Genesis GV70 or the Lexus NX350 hybrid. And then again, a big shout out to Brian and Bailey and all of those at Genesis Niagara. If you are looking for a Genesis, make sure you hit those guys up and check out their new dealership right here in St. Catharines. In the grand scheme of things, Genesis is still sort of the new kid on the block when it comes to the luxury automotive lineups. However, in today's video, I'm gonna explore why the GV80 is such a great competitor to the Lexus RX. Make sure you stay to the end because there's a lot of things about this vehicle that really impress me. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, as well as find me on Instagram at @TheDustinMason for more related content, as well as letting me know if there's any other videos like this you want to see. Okay, so Genesis as a brand has been popping up on my radar for the last couple of years. In fact, every month I sit down with our sales staff and go over the previous month's numbers for all of our local competitive brands. And watching Genesis slowly climbing those ranks for being a new brand in the luxury industry. I mean, this is sort of an industry of competitors, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, and Lexus, that have a huge history and reputations sort of backing them. Discovering the GV80 and going through it, I can already tell that Genesis knew that and thought we need to come into the market guns a-blazing to be able to compete with those historical brands. And that's when I decided to compare it to our Lexus RX, which has like been the bread and butter of Lexus for, you know, a couple decades now. And being that they're both mid-size SUVs, yes, the GV80 is gonna be a little bit bigger in some areas in terms of space and sometimes even price. However, the two of them are closer than I think. And even before this video, in the comment section, I always got messages saying, make sure you review a GV70, make sure you review a GV80, because the audience is looking at both Lexus and Genesis. So today we're gonna see the comparison. Let's talk about the styling. Now, one thing that no one can knock Genesis for, in my opinion, is that really nice front end. So we have a very classy, massive front grille. I mean, it does remind me a lot of the Lexus spindle grille on the F-Sport models. In fact, as we get lower, same with the bottom, really reminds me of it with the black. This top part is like it's like a chrome plastic, which I think suits the chrome trim that's all around it. I will say, and I've heard a lot of other people say this too, I really wish we lived in an area that you didn't need this front plate, because this front end looks way better without it. Like most cars, to be honest. But yeah, being that it's right smack dab in the middle of this beautiful grille, definitely is not doing it any favors. Also, we have all the sensors sort of hidden. So like even this big sensor here for the things like the radar cruise control, the parking sensors, none of them are obnoxious. I mean, maybe that front camera is pretty obvious, but the rest are pretty hidden. And we have some decorations at the bottom with some passive aero. Like I can actually stick my hand in there. I can tell it's probably going to the turbocharged intercooler in the back there. And same with on the sides. I do notice some active aero there as well. So we have these daytime running lights that, again, very luxurious. There is a little bit of a texture to them when you get up close. I mean, it's interesting because at first, it just looks like the texture is almost like a thicker frosting, but as you get to the side, it's almost like those elements become a bit more three-dimensional. So with the headlights on, we can see there's a ton of little elements there. And it's kind of funny because in the industry, it used to be, you know, just one headlight or two or three. And then we've seen these luxury brands add more and more and more. And it does create a little bit of a dimension to the headlights, I think. The first 4 or 5 are doing actual headlighting. The ones as you get to the outside are kind of there just as like added decoration. There's 9 on the top, 9 on the bottom. Again, there's lots of details to them. They're kind of like these little cubes that have the actual LED behind it and project out. So I'm sure that's really good at nighttime. And also, as you probably saw when I hit unlock, it does change. The daytime running light is the actual signal. So again, looks really good. I'm pretty sure that this is the highest package. I don't know about, you know, the lower packages if it has the same headlight, But on this one, super classy and looks amazing. If we are to compare this to the RX, I mean, we're still seeing that same luxury styling. The daytime running light is more of that frosted look. There's not much dimension to it, but it is super crisp. Headlights, I mean, we have 3 of pretty much the bigger version of what we saw in the Genesis. And these ones have the intelligent adaptive headlights. I'm pretty sure the Genesis has that exact same thing. I haven't tried it. And then obviously we have some curb lighting fog lights at the end. With the Lexus, we're seeing a little bit less is more when it comes to that front grille. So it used to be that we had lots of hatching and stuff like this, and this is the executive. And now we're seeing a little bit more of that EV body language spilling over into all of the lineup. And what I mean by that is sort of this grille fading away here at the top and at the sides into more bumper. So we're seeing a little bit less aero in terms of like, you know, things that suck in air, because EVs don't need to do that. And having it more streamlined for things like fuel efficiency. And that's what we see with the RX. I mean, there is still a little bit of air ducts going on at the bottom and in the middle. However, the bumper itself is pretty smooth once it fades out of that grille. Doing the side profile of the GV80, we know it's bigger. We know it's a little bit longer. It turns out it's also a little bit taller, and it is a little bit wider. Pretty close, but it is wider. So you will notice that a little bit when comparing it to the RX. One thing that I love so much is this light here. Like, I've seen these Genesi on the road, and I've always seen that little decoration on the side. I didn't realize it lit up. It really reminds me of JDM. And what I mean by that is, like, on my JDM Supra, there's a light on that fender for the signal. I think it was like, you know, a law in certain countries. And I like that Genesis has it here. I kind of wonder if the new ES has that as well, because you sort of see some design there. Okay, for wheels, we have a 22-inch wheel setup on this particular model. It is the fully loaded one, so I'm sure on the other ones it has a little bit smaller. Decent sized brake there. It looks like at least a 6-piston caliper. For the most part, the wheel itself has a really nice design to it. Nothing too crazy here. And actually, surprisingly, not a lot of wheel gap, which I always think creates a really cool stance for a car like this. Looking down the body, we don't have a ton of like sharp lines. We have some subtle lines. Like, there is a line that sort of goes all the way from the front to the back, and it almost fades a little bit as it goes. And then beneath that, there's one that starts at the back and then fades into a smooth panel towards the front. I did hear that those types of lines are really good for structural integrity, like for a side impact. Towards the bottom, we have, it's pretty much a mirror. It's not even chrome, it's just a full-on mirror, which is great to check out my hair, as long as the water spots don't settle on there too much. When it captures the light, it probably draws your attention to it, I'm sure. Not much of a body kit. It actually kind of goes in and under instead of like out and flares out. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there's a lot of things I love about this GV80, and I'm gonna show you one right now. It is the soft closed doors. That's right. Mid-size SUV, soft closed doors. Now, I think this is like the flagship for Genesis, so that makes sense, because in our flagships with Lexus, you get soft close in like, you know, the LX or the LS. But the fact that it's here is just a lovely thing. And also the door itself, super heavy, really solid. Oh, just sounds very luxurious, and I'm very impressed with it. In terms of height of that car, I mean, I'm 6'1". I could check to make sure there's no bird poop on the top, but barely, because it is a really tall vehicle. And even that back door is pretty massive, I find. Getting in and out of the back, very easy because of how tall that is. And again, very super solid. Design language, as we get to the very back, I mean, we have a little bit big of a panel here because it is a 3-row. Reminds me of the RXL from back in the day, but it is a 3-row, and there is a little window here in case you have anybody in those jump seats. Over to the RX, and the RX is my baby right now because I just got an RX luxury demo that I'm driving, and I love it so much. So let's talk about the wheels. We have 21-inch wheels on the RX. This is an executive, fully jammed model, and this one's kind of like a multi-spoke, and I like when Lexus has so many different wheel options. I'm driving a luxury, has a totally different wheel than this. The executive has this multi-spoke. It all looks good, and actually not a ton of wheel gap either, although we have this little fender thing on there, but still overall pretty similar, except for the Genesis is 22. Height-wise, I mean, I already know because I read ahead of time that the RX roofline is a little bit lower than that GV80. And it is, but again, I'm 6 foot tall. I never have problems getting in and out of the RX. In fact, it's kind of like the perfect height for me. And with the RX, we don't have soft close, but we have a really solid door that has the electronic door latch. So instead of like pulling a handle, there's just a little button inside that handle. And same thing when we go to leave, there's a pressure point that you just sort of do in one motion instead of like pulling a handle and using your elbow and stuff like that, which I've always been a good fan of. We do have some chrome trim around the windows, just like on the Genesis, and our rear door opens very nice and wide, and again, is easy to get into. Although I will say there's a little bit of an angle here because that sporty sort of like flow that goes to the back. You know, midway here, it's got a little bit more angle to it. There's a little bit more of a flare to the bottom and a little bit more of a body kit on the bottom to make it look, I think it's a little bit sportier. If I had to say first impressions, RX versus the Genesis, the RX does look a little bit sportier. Over to the back of the GV80, I do love the way this looks, and it's pretty unlike anything else out there right now. We have these taillights that are sort of off in the corners, which is really all you need a taillight to be, I guess, when you think about it. Lots of dimension to it, and I think that's really important when it comes to bodywork. So, I mean, I see an outline in the actual taillight itself, and then we have these long lines, kind of like the front daytime running lights for our signal. So it's like a combination lamp with a little bit of like a sequential setup. We have some more grilling happening at the sides here. Is that what I think it is? I think that's the reverse light, which is pretty cool right at the bottom there. Some chrome, which is really classy in this color combination as well. 4-wheel drive 3.5T, which I'll talk about later when we talk about the engine. And then Genesis spelled out across the back. I feel like at first Genesis didn't have that. Maybe I'm just mistaken. We're seeing that a lot in the industry right now. Like Lexus is the same. It's Lexus, spelt probably from the same supplier, which is all right. And then GV80 in the bottom left corner. This is interesting. So we have an exposed wiper, and the button to open the trunk is actually on the wiper, which I didn't realize before. Then we have our 3-row SUV with a little nicely presented kit here for that. So with the 3rd row up, there actually is a little bit of space here, which is surprising because a lot of times manufacturers struggle with that part. And if we fold these down, oops, I just folded down the middle row too. You can fold down all of the rows from back here, by the way. And then we have this massive space. I would probably just use it with the 3rd row folded down until I needed something. And with that, you do have a lot of cargo space here as well, which is nice. And I mean, because it's got that 3rd row, there's like little armrests and stuff back here. I don't know how to open that. Oh, it's right there. So you could always have little small things back there, and they have their own climate control, which is really cool. And vents all the way back here too, which is pretty impressive. So decent size to get stuff in and out of. It looks like we have probably a little bit of storage here too. I'm just gonna pop it up and take a peek, because I'm not sure. Yeah, so we have a tonneau cover, we got some storage, looks like maybe a tire kit, and some books and stuff like that. And actually, you guys, this Genesis tire mobility kit is like leather, and it's like, it looks nice. It's not it's not just utility, it actually looks really good. So far, this is doing a good job. Back to the RX, and this is where the back end of your vehicle does matter, because even though both are beautiful, I'm noticing some big differences. The RX is more plain and more sporty, where the Genesis is a little bit more bold. So what we have here on the Lexus is that taillight that goes right from one side to the other and underlines Lexus. Really reminds me of like Porsche is another brand that does sort of a similar design language to the back end. Where on the Genesis, I would compare it more to like the Bentley back end. And don't forget, on the RX, our wiper is tucked underneath this. So it's actually hidden, it's not exposed like on the Genesis, so it does have a nice swooping motion and just adds to that plainness. And then we just have the RX 350 all-wheel drive, a little bit of color changing towards the bottom there, but nothing too crazy. And then space-wise, I mean, still a lot of usable space. We don't have that 3rd row, so maybe that gave us a little bit more floor space. I'm not too sure. Always really easy to fold down those seats from using buttons, just like on the Genesis. And width-wise, probably very similar. That Genesis is a little bit longer, so I wouldn't be surprised if the cubic feet of it is longer than the RX. So now sitting in the Genesis, and let me tell you, it's good. There's a lot of really nice details here. I said that as soon as I got home from driving it today, when I brought it to the dealership. I was like, they just did such a good job. So let me show you some of the things. One of them, which seems so silly, but I noticed right away, and again, I'm Mr. Lexus, don't forget. So when I pay a compliment to another brand, I try to be very unbiased. Even the signal switch is good. Like, it just feels different. It feels higher end. And that is to say with a lot of the switches. Turning on the headlights is an experience. And one of the cool things that Genesis thought of is even when you're turning on something like the headlights, like we all have to like look at the stock of the headlights to see which one we're in, and then we just guess. And with most brands, they just use the generic headlight switch from like all of their cars. With Genesis, on the headlight switch itself, there's a detail of like, are you an auto, high beam, low beam, whatever, but they take it a step further. Anything you change shows up on the screen, because why not? It's an infinity screen that goes from the multimedia right into the display cluster, and I'll talk pros and cons about that later, but why not have everything on there? And what I noticed before that, silly enough, is when I reached down to adjust my seat, because I'm a little bit tall, even before I touched any button at all, I'm just feeling around down there, I could feel and see which switch does what on the screen. And it's like, why aren't other car brands doing that? Because especially being the first time in this car, I don't know which switch does which and where my fingers are. I'm just like feeling around down there. I'm blind, but I can see it on the screen. And that is so smart, Genesis. And this is what I'm talking about. Genesis knew that they have competition. They have competition with a loyal database. So doing these little things to the consumer make it make sense to try a brand like this. So speaking of materials, I mean, inside we have kind of like an open pore stone look, two-tone, with this really nice burgundy, brownish, reddish leather interior. The seats themselves, super solid. I love the diamond stitch panels. I think it always just adds a little bit of structure to the seat, I find. There's a little bit of plastic, but none of it feels super cheap. Some pieces remind me of other cars, like some of it reminds me of Mercedes, like on the steering wheel here. And in the center, I mean, we have a train select where you can go from eco to normal to sport to, I think, like a custom mode. And that switch is interesting because instead of just like clicking, it's got a spring in there. So it actually just kind of like moves back. It's got auto park featuring, it's got bird's eye view, which works amazing. It's very high def. And then we have my first gripe of the car. And again, I don't have many gripes with this car. I do really think they did a great job. Our gear shift, which is really lovely to use. It's like, just like a little wheel. It feels great. It's almost like a glass exterior. And then you just press park to put it in park. My gripe is actually with the fact that just moving up a few inches is how you control the multimedia, and it's the same movement. And I kind of thought that that's a little silly because like, I know some guests might get those kind of confused and end up, you know, trying to turn off their Nickelback and ending up in reverse. But that's just an old joke. You know, that would probably be my only gripe. But I mean, once you get used to it, I guess you would just like know that lower is the gear shift and upper is the way you control the media. And by the way, the multimedia system seems good. Like, I only played with it for a little bit. There seems to be so many layers to the system. Maps, destination, phone projection, phone setup, 3D setup, which kind of like is just like a more animated version of being able to like see what the car offers. There's this cool feature called Mood Curator. And if you click on it, you can choose between vitality, delight, care, comfort, and depending on what you choose. So like, let's do delight, because I think that's a fun one. And it'll tell you it's gonna do music, it's gonna do lighting, the ambient lighting, and some of them even project a scent outside. So there's like a canister you can fill up with like a perfume or a fragrance. So let's just hit start and I'll show you, and it's a good test of the sound system, which is, by the way, Bang & Olufsen, which is amazing. Just a happy time. The surround sound is really good. It has the reference setting or the surround setting, so depending on what you want to listen to. But what a cool little... I mean, it's just good. Imagine just having a bad day, driving home, can't decide what XM radio station to put on or what playlist to put on, and you can just put on some delightful. It's good, it's cool. I'm seeing a lot of car brands do this, especially the EVs are doing stuff like that because they need to entertain their guests while they charge, but I think that's cool. I like it. Okay, this little panel opens up, and we have a wireless charger here. We have USB-C, we have actually two USB-Cs. And I always like a car that you can just tuck away your phone, because I'm super addicted to mine. So I like to get it out of sight. Cup holders have some ambient lighting to it. Armrest opens up 2 ways, and that's hilarious. I thought it was so shallow at first, and then I realized, oh, the tray comes out and then it goes all the way down up to like my elbow. So lots of storage there, nice lighting. And it's got like a velvet sort of like interior to it. Then we have this little panel, which is easy to miss, but it shows all of our climate controls. So heated and cooled seats. We have our fragrance button that if it was full, we could hit. We have our passenger one. That's super easy. And then we have some quick shortcuts for things on the radio, like pulling up nav, quick radio media. It's always important to know where your hazards are. And then an actual tune knob, which is rare, I feel like these days, and a volume knob as well. A couple vents above that sort of, you know, are just your standard issue. And then that massive OLED screen. So interesting enough, it's very sharp. And I thought it was very Mercedes S-Class like, going from one end to the other and having it all flush. And then I realized I do miss a little bit of dimension there, but I mean, maybe I'd get over that because it is really nice to look at. And it makes the dash look really clean and organized. On the steering wheel itself, I mean, nothing too crazy here. We have some controls and customizations to get on the gauge cluster version. This is so Mercedes. I need to review a Mercedes and just compare. I think they're pretty much the same. Sometimes with these types of cars, we'll see literally the same part. Like you know, for instance, the mirror is one of those digital ones that show over your camera at the back. It's like right out of a Lexus. Like it's the exact part, it seems. And I wonder if that's the same with some of these parts for the steering wheel and stuff like that, because they did do a really good job. On the left, we just have some dimmer switch. Nothing too crazy there. Up here, sunglass holder, heck yes. And it's like kind of silver, which is nice. That's just different. Some regular controls for things like map lights and what have you. Overall, really good. Oh, by the way, the headliner is almost like an Alcantara. So the A pillars are kind of like a softer Alcantara, and then the roof liner is a little bit more dense than that. It feels a little bit different. But overall, the seats are amazing. The armrest is really good. The steering wheel looks good. There is a little secret feature here. I can move the passenger seat forward and backward, which is very Lexus LS-like. We see that in cars that are executive class cars, so that the passenger in the back can move the passenger in the front up. And that brings me to, let's check out that back seat. Okay, so sitting in the back of the GV80, already there's so many things I love, so many little details. So one of them is curtains that are powered and go up. Yes, certain RX packages have curtains in the back that you can manually do, but only our LS has the power ones, from what I can think of. So that's really cool. We have some nice ambient lighting here. Again, some good textures and stuff like that. The seats are really good. You can move them a little bit. It's all the way back right now. The front's almost touching me, but I think it's because it's like in the mode where it's like an exit. We do have a nice armrest with a little bit of storage here. That kind of has a little bit of a spring to it. So it feels really solid. I know I'm supposed to be comparing this to the RX, but I keep finding details that are only in our flagships, like the vanity mirror. So back here, we have a vanity mirror, and this was in the Lexus LS for the reason of having celebrities being driven around in these things and being able to like check to make sure their makeup and face and hair look good before getting out of the car, and the Genesis GV80 has it. I see a little hook here, which I can only, people in the comments are gonna correct me for sure, but I think it's a coat hook. I think it's a coat hook, or maybe for an accessory. And there's also a hook up here. We have heated and cooled seats back here and some different climates with vents everywhere back here. We have vents down there and vents for the third row as well. And, oh, look at that. I have a wall outlet back here as well as some USB-Cs. So if you were back here doing work and you needed to charge your laptop or something like that, there is a place to do so. So yeah, some amenities back here for sure. I would love to be driven around one of these. I think they did a really good job, Genesis. I'm a Lexus guy, but this is working on me. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so I'm gonna get into the third row, but before that, I need to give everybody caution. I went to the trunk to make sure the third row would fold up, and I pressed the wrong button, and this center row came crashing down because it's like spring-loaded, and almost knocked the camera out of Bhaskar's hand. So make sure you don't have like a kid back here or something like that if you're gonna press that button, because it happens quick, let me tell you, like that. So I'm gonna move that a little bit. I'm gonna step back here. There is a button on the top and the bottom, so it's easy to get there from the back or from outside. And I'm just going to climb in a little bit. It is tight, it's for sure tight. These are like a jump seat. So we're not expecting, you know, TX level of luxury back here. So it is tight, I'm not gonna lie. My head is touching the roof. But we have amenities. I have a cup holder on each side, and the cup holder itself is like trimmed off in some like chrome decoration. I have a vent right beside my face. I have 2 vents right beside my face. So it's decently equipped. It'd be great for kids. And you have your own little glove box on each side, which is cool. And there's climate control back here. So you have auto climate control, and you can change if it's going at your face or your feet. So that means there must be a vent at my feet somewhere back here too. So it's tight, but it's good back here. And we got speakers back here too. Bang & Olufsen with the actual metal grille. So yeah, if you have kids, this 3rd row is super useful. If you're gonna have an adult back here, maybe look at one just a little bit bigger, TX size, Denali size, something like that. But still good enough, not gonna lie. It's not too bad. Okay, so now back into the RX, where I'm so familiar with. So it's easy to like pick out the differences between the Genesis. First thing that comes to mind is my theme and layers. So definitely the inside of the RX feels like there's more layers to it. You know, everything from the dashboard being layered to the fact that it's not just one screen for the nav system and the gauge cluster, I guess you can say. Space-wise, I mean, they're both gonna be pretty comparable. We have some different textures, like we have Alcantara here kind of like on the door panel, but not the same on like the A-pillar and the roof, which is still like a soft material. We still have a good size armrest, very similar layout here on the center console, although we have like a shifter instead of that turn knob. And then our phone holder kind of is like deep tucked away. That Genesis one actually being up was kind of nice. And I'm now realizing something. So as manufacturers go towards that Mercedes S-Class style screen where it's just like one wide screen, I do realize it gets rid of a little bit of the detail in the difference between one screen to the next. And what I mean by that is for so many years, we were used to like a gauge cluster that had needles that, you know, would rev up and textures and dimensions to it and stuff like that. With the Genesis one, even though it's really crisp, it's flat. The Lexus has a bit more dimension to it. It's still screen, but the screen looks like it's physical, I guess you could say, which is, I know, kind of silly to harp on, but that's how close these cars are. I mean, we have this really luxurious seat here. I have, you know, thigh support, and it maybe does feel a little bit sportier inside. I think that's part of that extra size that the Genesis has. But overall, I mean, executive Lexus RX versus that, in terms of like amenities and layout and stuff like that, they're really similar. I mean, they both hold their own for sure. Okay, so back in the back seat of the RX, okay, the amenities are a little bit different. So for instance, I have a curtain here, but it's manual. I mean, to each their own. It's not as much as a flex of the powered one of the Genesis, but it's still there, it's still cool. We still have the Alcantara, we still have the electronic door latch. Armrest that comes down with storage and cup holders. I have heated and cooled seats back here as well, and a couple buttons to be able to do that. I don't have the wall charger like in the Genesis, but I feel like my space might be a little bit better used. I don't know if that's just in my head. I noticed I could recline this one back more. So maybe it feels a little bit more comfortable in some areas, like the way the seat reclines, but it's missing a few of the amenities. I think technically there's more headroom in the Genesis, although even here, I'm not bad at all. So again, both mid-size level luxury for sure. So let's talk about the engine on both. The Genesis that we reviewed tonight has a twin turbo 3.5 liter V6, pushing out to 375 horsepower, which is a beast. The RX 350 is like 275 horsepower. It is like 400 pounds lighter. So interesting to see usable power, because if there's anything I learned in my 30s versus being in my 20s, is that horsepower on a piece of paper doesn't mean a good drive versus a bad drive versus even a fun drive. I would probably compare it more to our RX 500h, which has a few more ponies under that hood, definitely closer to this 375 horsepower. And with that, there is some other things that Genesis as a brand is doing right now that's really interesting. And again, I think they're doing this to really stand out from the other luxury brands or keep up with them. For instance, fixed pricing. Genesis do not allow discounts. So whatever you see is the price, no ifs, ands, or buts. And in that price I think it's 5 years of maintenance covered. With a brand like Lexus, you can get that with extended warranty at a cost and cover, years of maintenance. Although with Lexus, I don't think they needed to do that too often because it's a very reliable brand with a really low maintenance cost. And in Canada, as far as I know, and I don't know if it's just certain models of Genesis, but that fixed price also comes with a set of winter tires, which is a big value because these are all things people think about. When you buy a new vehicle, you're thinking about, okay, I gotta spend money on winter tires. You're thinking about, I gotta do maintenance costs. And if you've never been into a Genesis dealership, they are super cool in their own. We just opened up the new Genesis store here in St. Catharines, and it is super cool inside. It's almost like some dark colors with like some lounge areas that remind me of like a modern living room. Even how you do business there is a little bit different than your traditional dealership. It's almost like a boutique. Reminds me of like a boutique hotel or a boutique fashion store, something like that. So Genesis seems to be doing it right. And that's why I wasn't surprised that so many people in my comments and on my Instagram were saying, do the Genesis lineup, do a comparison. Because it's definitely bringing its own flavor to an already very competitive luxury auto market, especially with the big guys. So let me know in the comments below what you thought of the GV80. Message me on Instagram if there's any other comparisons you want me to see. And a big shout out to Genesis Niagara with Rain and Brian and everybody who made it happen, me being able to film this GV80, and I think I'm gonna do the GV70 next. So we'll see what happens then. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.